Hi, everybody. Welcome to the third episode of University Health Network speaker series called MedLab Chats. I'm Christine Bruce, the Senior Director for the Lab Medicine program here. And before we kick off, as is our custom, we're inviting folks to join in today by asking questions using slido.com. So there should be the QR code on your screen that you can scan and ask your question there by entering hashtag MedLab Chats. And we'll be doing those questions as we usually do at the end of the episode today. So listen. I'm really glad everybody could join today. It is a huge week here in UHN and LMP. Today's chat is focused on all things point of care. I think folks would have got that from the title of the advertisement for the chat today. But for me, it has a very specific objective. I want to spend an hour with a really awesome laboratorian and letting you have line of sight to this person who's been masterminding point of care as we know it today in the background, while we have all been happily just appreciating that the service is safely there. I'm pleased to be joined today by Chris Curcio. You may not know her in person, but I am confident that any of you in the lab industry definitely know her name. She is the Senior Manager of the Point of Care Testing Service here at UHN and LMP, and she is in that role for 2.5 more days. And so UHN has been so privileged to have her on the LMP team for her entire career, which is 40 and a few days, 40
Yes.
years and a few days.
Yes, yes.
And it's really a bit of a heartbreak to share that she is sunsetting and hanging up her lab coat come this Friday. But we're going to use her up as much as we can while we've got her. Welcome to MedLab Chats, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me. And I know that it was kind of a last minute thing that, could you please do this? And so thank you for fitting this in at your last in your last week. If you're hearing a little bit of beeping in the background, we're in the middle of an actual lab, so we're just going to let the natural lab processes happen. Let's start getting the who you are out there for everybody today. Tell us a little bit, Chris, about your lab journey. 40 years is a heck of a long time. I'm confident that while we all think you've been doing point of care forever, it hasn't been that way forever. So maybe just give us a little bit of an overview of kind of where you started, how you got here,
Sure.
and and kind of why you want to end so soon.
Sure, no, great, thank you. I'll try not to be overly verbose about it, but I am a graduate from the Toronto Institute of Medical Technology, now known as the Michener Institute, and it was a 2-year program at that time, and I did my clinical placement actually in my second year at Toronto General Hospital. So I came here in 1984. As a keen lab student.
1984. And everyone's right now going, okay, now where was I in 1984? Right. Not even going to tell you what I was doing in 1984. Go ahead.
Yeah, things have changed quite a bit. But so I came and did my clinical placement here. A wonderful place to be. As I said, I knew the place was a pretty special place to begin with. Stellar reputation that time independently as Toronto General Hospital. So I rotated through the labs here, and what a great experience that was. And then I wrote my CSMLS exam and put the MLT behind my name, which was great. And then I actually was very, very fortunate to start working in the Department of Clinical Biochemistry at the time, which was where my heart belonged because I did love the Department of Clinical Biochemistry. So I started there in 1984 as a general duty medical laboratory technologist, which was absolutely wonderful. A big lab doing all sorts of innovative, new developmental type of testing. I mean, automation was sort of at its beginning and its infancy, but we had automation nonetheless, and it just absolutely blew my mind. And as I have recounted before, one of the stellar things that were in the lab at the time was this mainframe computer, which was about the size of a small refrigerator, in the corner of clinical biochemistry. We data entered our QC results into that computer that then statistically analyzed them and gave us Levy-Jennings plots and CVs and wonderful data. And that was very, very state of the art. So, but we continued to develop new methods. We made reagents in-house in biochemistry, and that was a wonderful period of time. So I then was fortunate to have 2 children, which I delivered at Toronto General Hospital, back when we had OBGYN. And then I job shared for 9 years with a very close colleague of mine. We were lab partners at TIMT, and job shared on the evening shift for 9 years, which was fabulous in biochemistry. Things were happening in the background as well. UHN was forming as we know it today, but at that time Toronto General and Toronto Western had come together as one organization. And then Princess Margaret Hospital was not far along to join after that. So I came back to work full time with a lot of vim and vigor in biochemistry, and then the opportunity came up, which my close friend and colleague Mary Fountas, I think, recommended me for, which was to be the first person overseeing in a coordinator type position under the umbrella of clinical biochemistry, point of care testing coordinator, and this little program called Point of Care, which I gladly accepted.
Did you know what you were accepting at the time?
Not really knowing a whole lot about what was going on, other than we knew that glucose meters had been introduced by biochemistry here at Toronto General very early on, and would just take it from there and figure things out. And boy, did we ever.
Right.
So then just started on that journey, coordinating point of care testing, who's doing what with what across the hospital sites, and then of course Toronto Western and Princess Margaret. And then the other thing that was happening at the time was accreditation. The Ontario Lab Accreditation Program was coming, and they had a fulsome set of requirements for point of care testing, which sort of became the background and the background information and structure that we needed for how we were going to move forward. And it was a wonderful time because I wasn't sure what was actually going to transpire in the future, but I figured this is a little program that could really grow. And given that it is laboratory testing performed in the point of care by non-laboratory personnel, we figured out very early on that it was going to have a very positive impact on patient care. So glucose meters are one thing because they just sort of revolutionized how our diabetic patients were able to take care of themselves at home, and then when they came into hospital, and then the program grew from there.
Right.
We had an interest. Because of the center that we are, we were doing a lot of blood gas analysis in the main laboratory in biochemistry, and there was a lot of interest, and the technology was developing whereby could we bring blood gas analysis to the point of care, i.e. to the bedside in the operating rooms and the ICUs, which we did. We did lots of investigation and validation and lots of training and figured it out. And that, and things just continued to evolve from there because we discovered some things that were being done in the point of care that we needed to get in shape in terms of accreditation requirements, and then we just kept growing. IT was coming along. My gosh, we were going to put all of this information on the hospital network, and then lo and behold, we could connect it to the electronic patient record, so there would be a fulsome record of laboratory testing, including point of care testing in the electronic patient record. It was very, very exciting times.
It all sounds very straightforward, like super easy. You just came in, said, yeah, we're going to do that, click, 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 put it in the system, everything's going to be great. Yeah, as if.
Yes.
And so I remember when I started here and I was trying to understand the point of care program here, because it is renowned as easily the largest and most successful of its kind, certainly in Canada, probably, and beyond, given that it comes out of this one center of hospitals and just the different types of point of care assays we do. I mean, there's probably bigger glucometer programs, I would say, but the diversity of our program it's substantial. And so then as you were sort of sharing that with me, I remember you saying, well, no, Christine, it's not about what we have, it's the relationships. And so if you think about MLTs and, you know, as a card-carrying MLT, I mean, there are times when I can be a little bit snooty and hey, nobody can do what I do. Only MLTs can do what I do. And of course, we all know better. But way back then, when accreditation was starting and, you know, MLTs were MLTs and all the other job classifications did what they do really well. How did we feel then when point of care was an emerging thing and largely glucometer based, but something on the horizon? How do we feel about sort of handing that ownership over to not even a lab profession, like you're handing it off to interdisciplinary colleagues? Like at the time, did that feel like a really comfy thing to do? Or was there a lot of relationship building, a lot of foundation setting, or was it just like that, sort of how you describe it?
There was a lot of apprehension at the time, no question. But what the opportunity also afforded me was the ability to get to know my clinical area partners, nurses, RTs, perfusionists. I was also very well supported by the department and the overall concept of moving ahead with point of care testing. I had decided very early on that and at UHN, we had started doing a lot of work on, particularly on patient-centered care, that I was going to need to use a patient-centered care approach to how we were going to do this. Could we do this safely and meet accreditation requirements? Because luckily we had that backbone and infrastructure framework to build the program. And what with the manufacturing sector coming up with these technologies where essentially the analytical phase of testing was all, you know, rock solid and taken care of, mostly. Then it would become a matter of building relationships with our clinical area partners. We recognized that we needed to be more ambassadors for the labs and the lab medicine program, hook people up with the appropriate medical scientific staff if they didn't know who to get in touch with, but to also have a very robust training program to help understand how to run the devices, pre-analytical, analytical, post-analytical phase of testing, when to question results and when to repeat. And then, so it became apparent very early on that it was going to be relationship building and building the technical requirements in our standard operating procedures and policies, et cetera, and staying in touch. And of course, the other important component is the participation in external quality assessment and proficiency testing for any point of care testing. So we were going to stay connected with our clinical area partners for sure on that front because we were going to enroll in the appropriate proficiency or external quality assessment surveys. And this would be a continuum and it would continue on. And those relationships did get built. And then some more requests came up for various clinical areas would come up with a request for a certain point of care test that they had heard about at either a conference or were just thinking it in terms of how it would benefit their clinical practice. So we needed to put a policy together to figure out what we would do with new requests and how we would handle new requests, and put the clinical area in touch with the lab professionals and myself as sort of the in-between to have those discussions. It also became apparent that we were going to have to build the team a little bit because I started off solo, but fortunately,
in the early it was just you
as the point of care coordinator, yes, and it did become apparent that we were going to have to build the team up a little bit because it was growing and expanding. But as I said again, I was supported and well supported, and we were doing some very early work with our northern partners at that time, and then it became, well, can we help to spread this information to our northern partners, as an example. I thought, well, sure we can. Sure we can. Because
Party of one.
because we could go out and present and help folks understand it and how to build the program. I mean, that was an internal thing that I personally needed to get comfortable with as well. So started putting some presentations together, and as I said, our relationship with the northern clients was sort of in its earlier days. So I got comfortable with that, got comfortable with PowerPoint, and thought, okay, well, here we go. Because it's, it's important to spread that information around and just help others understand what we're doing here. So maybe, because we've had a lot of growing pains, no question, right? But help others work through that. That's really the premise behind the early days, and I was very well supported.
And even that, as in, because there's, of course, I've got my script of things I want to ask, but we're all over the place, and so we'll just stay in that vein. So, I mean, it's the early days, and you're talking about, yes, we brought things to our northern partners or other sites emerging, needing support through establishing their own local point of care program and wanting UHN's guidance, perhaps, on that. And is that the gap? Is that people just need the guidance, or have you found yourself ever having to position point of care as a good thing? You should think, is it really, I'd love to do it, I just don't know how, UHN, or is it you really should be exploring this as an idea, particularly when we think about some of the really remote communities Has it been a sales pitch, or is it something that you just have to enable?
To a certain extent, a little bit for the laboratorians out there, and,
How
just
so?
to try and circle us all back to a model of patient-centered care, and to begin to get comfortable with the idea of some laboratory testing taking place in the point of care, because the fact is the devices are there and they're ready to be used and they can positively impact patient care. So, and then sort of being the conduit in between the lab folks, through presentations and attending meetings where I could and that sort of thing, and the clinical area folks. Because clinical area folks, you need to understand what goes into a lab result, because a lot goes into it and many don't understand. And we want you to just make sure that you can have confidence in these results that you're going to derive in the point of care, because we need to help you understand that. And then for the lab side of things to get comfortable with letting a little part of us go to the bedside. At that time,
It's all good. We can work together.
We really do stay mostly behind the walls of the testing laboratory, which is where our expertise most definitely lies. No question about that whatsoever. It's just that there are some technologies that we can take safely to the bedside.
Right.
And as long as good training and all of the elements of quality assurance are there. So that was an evolution, definitely, as well. We're just sort of figuring it out as we went along.
With your team of, so you were a team of one, then how big did you get sort of in that mid?
But then I was fortunate enough to have, so at the time, all point of care testing fell under the umbrella of clinical biochemistry. So a biochemist would be our point of care testing director. One of them would be appointed to that. And then I was very fortunate enough to have 2 senior MLTs join the team, because we had an awful lot of quality control to review and sign off, and we needed to facilitate proficiency testing, because again, the accreditation requirements were well established, and we realized we needed to help with that, not actually do the testing, but facilitate it, get results in to the proficiency testing providers, etc. Look at new procedures. Constant training of expert users. We developed we modeled the Train the Trainer program very early on in point of cares, but we would do the expert user training so that they would be armed with all the information that they needed to go forth and train others. It's a pretty, the programs just got bigger and bigger as UHN did expand, as we know. So I mean, it was just it was building all of that, but it's been over time, and then. Okay, how are we going to function as a team now? Okay, well, here's what you guys are going to do, and then maybe I can go off and do a little bit more coordination, that sort of thing, but still keeping my hand in writing procedures, et cetera, of course, with the team contributing as well. And it did start to all mesh together.
Right.
Then we were fortunate enough to have an MLA join our team, which has been fabulous. So it's grown over time.
So the fiefdom is all of about 5 people.
Yes.
It's a massive program, still being led by and stick handled by five people.
Right.
So as you tell the story, there's a lot of rigor, there's a lot of thoughtfulness, there's a lot of evaluation and assessment of what do you need, where do you need it, when do you need it, point of care, yes, lab testing, no. Like really purposeful work going into establishing the program. And then COVID comes along, and then everyone and their brother has a point of care test we can use somewhere, and we're throwing point of care at the problem, not just COVID assays, but any assay really, where we're really just suddenly embracing it at every level, every user, every kind of facility, inside an accreditation program, outside of a program, all meaningful conversations to have, no one way, what I ever suggest is right or wrong, but what suddenly took away the purposeful thoughtfulness, paced, obviously, COVID, there was a bit of a need for speed, but suddenly all of the rigor and the safeguarding that we had kind of was like, oh, we're going to put this on a shelf because we have an emergency, and now it's just a bit of a free-for-all on the point of care side. And I think it's come back to being slightly more stable in terms of what we look at and evaluate things, and the like. But I just wonder what your thoughts were, because I know that you opine on a lot of different tables around just its use period for whatever reason, but I wanted to just acknowledge that and see what you thought.
Well, I mean, those were very challenging times, no
Yeah.
question. And I mean, the entire world was dealing with some situation, with a situation that we'd never been through before. And obviously, we needed to put the pedal to the metal pretty quickly to figure out how we're going to get through this. So again, it was, you know, consulting the appropriate medical scientific staff and putting the right folks together to understand this. And then just, okay, if we must participate proactively, because we're the best people to participate proactively, and we're the best to do the validation studies, et cetera. So it was a little bit of, okay, drop everything, and we need to do this right now. Challenging times, desperate times call for desperate measures.
Was it comfortable? Were you comfortable in those desperate assessment times?
It's been part of the journey all the way along, in that something will come up or come at you sideways, and you need to you know, sort of take some time to focus on it, figure out where it fits in the dynamic, and get to it. If anything, you know, I mean, the pandemic, it just presented very, very desperate, immediate type of action. And I mean, and you know, in the province and the country, well, and the world, needed to respond. And that was a time when many people were thinking about lab testing and laboratorians, which was our time to shine. And we did make some headway in terms of understanding the power of having a test at the bedside, but it can't be without the rigor of quality assurance to ensure the accuracy of the results, which is, at the end of the day, again, just for clinicians. Can you have confidence in these results?
Yeah.
And what's the point if you don't? Because then you might as well take a dart and throw it at a dartboard and pick a result. But you know, that was a time where and we did this over time as well, was we just established the fact that you need to be consulting with your lab. Consult with your lab. We're a wealth of information.
Yeah,
and
we know
knowledge.
things.
Right, we know stuff, and quality assurance is extremely important.
Yeah.
In order for you as a clinician, no matter what area you're practicing in, to have confidence in your results, and you know,
Yeah.
COVID-19 results were very, very important. So it was a very unusual set of circumstances at the time, and we learned a lot. Again, we learned a lot because we went through it.
Yeah.
So.
And do you see those fingerprints kind of on, even in the last year, like you can see some of that thoughtfulness now sort of reinforming our approach with what we've learned in the last 4 years, I guess.
Exactly, and I think what it's helped is for us as laboratorians to cement in our being and professionalism is that we are the best people.
Yeah. You heard it here, folks. We're the best people.
We need to be consulting and to be talking about this and to help guide and advise you. And we have to, but I've never had a problem, you know, going out and talking to people and just spreading the word. But I think we do need to, as a profession, we do need to tote our own horn more than we do, if that's possible, because we are the best people to provide that information and guide and advise.
Well, if there was ever a horn tutor,
well, there you go.
Right here. Awesome. Thank you for that. So I said fingerprints, and I was like, oh yeah, your fingerprints, your personal fingerprints, and I know a lot of your colleagues, particular Dr. Devor Brink, and the rest of the biochemistry team here. Your fingerprints are all over at least 35 point-of-care programs in Ontario. At least, well, perhaps not 35 programs, but in 35 facilities that are perhaps under what, 3, 4, maybe 5 different programs, maybe. What has that been like? What has been challenging about it? What has been rewarding about it for you? And how far out are we talking when we think about where you've been and the programs that you've influenced? Like where in the world are we talking? Like how far away would you say?
Well, I think what we have learned over time and in our partnerships with the North and the more remote areas where recruitment and retention of laboratory professionals can be a very big challenge, that point of care has a place.
Yep.
It can definitely have a utility, and with the ever important QA running around it, as we know. So what we started to see was real tangible evidence of standardization of devices and instrumentation, standardization of procedures, et cetera, quality control procedures, and not only in the main labs, but in the point of care testing settings. I think we know that also that several of our northern clients, sometimes there's been a choice that has to be made that you need to go full point of care, or the hospital could be at risk for having no laboratory testing whatsoever.
Yeah.
So the approach was always, how do we facilitate this safely, and can we? And the answer was yes, we can. And with IT systems evolving and emerging, we were able to facilitate some of that. All the while, again, drawing on the practical experience from UHN, but looking at things like volume and which tests do you actually need in this center versus that center. Glucose meters and our point-of-care glucose is practiced everywhere in a hospital, there's no question. So standardizing those platforms, but in addition, which other tests would be of real benefit for patient care in the point of care. So we've seen the benefit of standardization over time, and have just started some other additional very important work with our northern clients on all of this. And so the other thing that we were doing at the time was starting to teach some of our biochemistry residents and fellows, because chances are they were going to encounter a point of care program wherever it is they chose to practice in biochemistry. And then because of our relationship with the northern clients, many of our biochemists now need to be familiar with point of care testing and putting in all of those really good bells and whistles, QA, standardization, etc.
QA is a bell and a whistle.
It is, yeah.
Mary will be delighted to hear it, I'm sure.
I hope so.
Perfect. And so, great. I mean, we're weaving this story that, oh yeah, we're doing point of care and everyone's on board and everything is all well-meaning and everyone's getting the great benefit out of it. But what's not easy about it? Where are the challenges in really? Well, if you think about your career, like the arc that you've been on, like where have you just been like hitting the wall, or where it's like, oh geez, this is taking way longer than it should, or like what do you see are the typical issues that perhaps folks in similar predicaments can either ward them off or at least feel like there's some empathy that, oh yeah, I'm going through that too.
Well, I think sort of, after the first 10 years, it became very apparent that with the comings and goings of various staff members in various hospitals, these ones included, that training and training expert users, primarily our nursing colleagues as an example, would be a constant. And just people leaving, moving into new positions, et cetera, that training was going to be one of the main institutions of a point of care testing program, and having, being able to provide that training on an ongoing basis. And then in addition to validating, well, there are very rigorous accreditation requirements that for just an ongoing basis to maintain a point of care program, to continue to facilitate that work itself is very important, because those are the cornerstones of quality, and we had to have those as results and studies as evidence that the program is working, and then entertaining and figuring out new requests for point of care, and then I think just being ready for what is next coming up the pipe.
Yeah. So what is next coming up the pipe? We've seen when you go to conferences or trade shows and the like, there's always something that's new on the books, but quite often it could be coming from an overseas vendor that maybe doesn't have FDA or Health Canada approval, and they're just trying to break into a market. And so we don't tend to spend a lot of time evaluating those products if we're missing the two regulatory green stamps. But what are you seeing is kind of the next place to go? I mean, glucometers, big check. COVID, done. We're doing lots of things in coag. We're doing lots of things in blood gas management. Where else do we need to head, or where do you see we're heading? So your successor has to have a plan. What do you want her to be thinking about?
Well, I think it's point of care testing, as I understand it, is one of the fastest, and has been for quite some time, fastest growing areas of laboratory diagnostics. So the future will be great to see what's coming up the pipe, because we rely very heavily on our manufacturing and vendor products to bring do a lot of R&D and bring the next products to market, so we'll need to be watching that. Infectious disease, of course, and point of care in that area is definitely emerging and very, very important going forward. And then I don't know, but I at this point in time,
Your
at this
spidey
moment
sense
in
is telling you,
history,
yes.
maybe not so much in genetics, but who knows, right? I mean,
There's got to be an ask for it.
and
right?
molecular,
Yeah.
some molecular diagnostics in the point of care. Well,
Yeah.
well, I would venture to say that there's folks out there working on it, right? Having attended many conferences and international conferences over the years, I came to understand the importance and utility of point of care for many remote and areas, because having some testing was better than having no testing.
Right.
Absolutely. And then we've also come to learn that it's often the only alternative for several, let's say, more remote areas.
Like this
as well.
or nothing. Right?
It's this or nothing.
And it's good this, but it's a limited this.
Yeah. Having some information is better than having none whatsoever. As a clinician, I'm sure, right, to be able to figure out what should happen with your patient. So we'll see where it all goes in terms of what's coming up the pipe next.
Yeah.
But it's I think it's pretty rigorous. I'm sure there's a lot of R&D going on now that I suspect will happen in probably infectious disease testing and some molecular diagnostics. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Very cool.
Maybe not so much mass spectrometry because of obvious reasons, but you know what I'm saying? But yeah.
Someone's beavering away on that somewhere. So, you know, when earlier on in the chat, you were talking about sort of some of the friction around lab folks' appreciation of using point of care, and that it kind of eliminates potential work for lab folk, you know, not having it in the lab. And because today's not just necessarily with point of care, it's about meeting a really cool person. And so the other hat that you wear is while you're enabling non-lab practitioners to do lab testing, you're also today, for 2.5 more days, the face of new practitioners entering the workplace. And so you're our student placement gal.
Yes.
So we didn't prepare any unique questions about that, but I think it's really important that folks appreciate that you are the enabler of the student experience for lab professionals here at UHN. And so as you're sort of passing that mantle on, I wanted to know sort of what are some of your reflections on being able to do that? I mean, you've seen all of these shining, hopeful faces. You see the future of lab medicine coming in every year, year after year, every September. Are you still like amplified and just so excited to see all of these hopefuls?
Absolutely. I mean,
what's different now than when you were rolling off the assembly line?
Oh my gosh! Well, we know the programs have expanded over time, right? There's various hybrid programs available out there, but the medical laboratory technologists that are coming to clinical placement now are very bright, much better informed about molecular diagnostics and the more complex methods. They're coming to us very well prepared, and they are fully ensconced in a already established IT environment, which is fabulous. Not like me, who had to cross over from one center of the universe to the other.
Using your refrigerator mainframe, putting in your QC.
So. And the future is bright, as we know, because our profession will continue until the end of time, I'm sure.
Confident.
Yes.
Because we know things.
Yes, because we know things and we know stuff. I will, just to circle us back a little bit to point of care, is that we've put a little bit of training into the MLT placement here into the little arena called point of care testing, because it's very important to understand its utility, but also to sort of focus on our purpose, which we all know and our students certainly know, but we are here for our patients, and whatever form that needs to take, it needs to take, because laboratory testing is so very important, since some of it will take place in the point of care and some of it will take place behind the walls of the main laboratory. Well, the majority of it will, but just to, I guess it's been great to see them come, because now they're coming to a real live clinical laboratory where we rock and roll every single day of the year, no question. And to see them so enthusiastic and bright and humble about it all. And then of course then they go off to write their exam, and then they they hit the marketplace, and yeah.
There's nothing like real lived experience, right? I mean, it's all great to simulate, and it's great to learn, and it's always very exciting, and it feels very cool to know all this stuff. But when you actually have to apply it, it is quite something to see the fresh faces come in.
I always ask our students when they start with us, what is your favorite lab discipline? Because you've been through all of your theoretical. What is your favorite lab area that you think you want to practice in? And we just have a nice little.
Do they all say micro?
Micro and blood transfusion, and some are hematology focused as well. And then I usually say, and then I'm going to come back and ask you that question after you've been through your clinical rotations to see now where would you like to work?
Yeah, totally changes. In my time, which was 1,000 years ago, it was all micro. And I never understood it because that was not where I was going, certainly, which is bizarre when you consider my job before I came here. But yeah, I ended up being the transfusion girl at the end of the day. I could do those antibody investigations like that. Could I do it now? Like now we should go head to head with the students and try to write the exam alongside of them. I wonder how abysmal our performance would be.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh boy. Anyway,
yes.
so as you're reflecting, right? You're having a very, very cool week.
Yes,
we're on the Chris Curcio retirement tour 2024. We're celebrating and reflecting with you and talking about all of our cool Chris Curcio memories. What are a couple really cool memories that you've had in this last 40 years? I'm sure some of them are going to be point of care related, but they don't have to be for the purposes of this talk. But just for some of those new employees out there, new MLTs, laboratorians, and hopefuls that are listening in today, sort of what is in the career ahead for them that you've actually got to live that you're feeling pretty jazzed about?
Yeah, well, it's gone in many stages over the last 40 years. At first, after graduating, it was just, oh my gosh, I have a job.
Yeah.
And I
delighted.
can actually release results now to working in a major center, and then developing those relationships in the lab that I actually worked in, and just, hearing some of the discussion from some of the elders at that time, and now, of course, reflecting, seeing them having come to fruition.
And now we're elders.
Yes, now I'm an elder. And then, of course, sort of the big point for me was, we'd like you to take a position called point of care testing coordinator. Okay.
And you're
then
a team of one.
Yeah. And then just being able to embrace that and grow it over time with my laboratorian experience and knowledge to bring that to fruition. That has been wonderful. And then to realize, I guess, my own potential, my own personal potential, in terms of other people may want to hear about what you have to say. So I was really happy to be able to start doing some presentations and putting some posters together. I really think we should encourage all of our staff to do that, to go out and find conferences to present at and put some things together because people do want to hear. The IT experience, oh my gosh, and the advent of our electronic patient record, that was mind-blowing. And when that happened, and I saw it in its infancy, and then to see it, have progressed over the years to where we are now on our Epic hospital information system is just fabulous. And as I age, and I'm now reflecting on everything, I'm just really glad that UHN will be here in all of its glory in the years to come, because I'll probably need UHN at some point in time as well.
Hopefully not.
It's also right, but it's just to know the labs that well for this many years, seen many people come and go.
Yeah.
Those have definitely been the highlights.
And isn't that it, though? Like the very first one that you said, if somebody comes to you, that would be the takeaway, the learning, right? Is that if someone comes to you and says, I think you'd be really good at this, then jump at that. I mean, no one's going to approach you and say, I think you'd be good at this for the heck of it, because your recommendation is also on the line too, right? And I find that it's really challenging to have folks really believe in their own potential. And I don't know if it's because we're so distracted and we're so just hypercritical of ourselves. I don't know what happened. Somewhere along the line, this started to be the reality, but to really encourage and get someone to believe in what they can truly deliver. Someone sees it in you, so why not take a stab at that? All you had to do was say yes and go, I'll be this coordinator of something that I don't quite understand, and now you're the queen of it, right?
Well,
that's pretty cool.
What a great ride! What a great ride! And very early on, I had some advice from one of our medical biochemists at the time, who had just, I think very casually had said to me, you know, Chris, you're in charge of your own professional reputation.
Yeah.
So make the best decision you can at that point in time, but your own professional reputation is your own professional reputation. So I thought, those are pretty sage words, and they've resonated very strongly over the years as well,
Yeah.
right? So I've never regretted doing something, even though I was way out of my comfort zone in many, many instances. I've never regretted it afterwards. So
Awesome. Well,
yeah.
I hope you don't have any regrets come Friday afternoon.
Well,
Apart from there not being perhaps a Tuesday afternoon that you signed off too early. Maybe that'll be the regret.
well,
But I suspect that we are going to see you around somewhere. I'm confident that the Chris Curcio name is still going to keep bouncing up, either because someone needed to consult with you or wanted you to opine on something or do a conference or a talk or whatever. I'm sure that your time in lab medicine is not over. Maybe a little break. Maybe a little break from lab medicine.
Yeah.
So, is there any parting thoughts? And then we're gonna flip it over to questions. So just again, folks, feel free to click onto Slido.com and put in hashtag MedLabChats. Pop your question in for Chris, and we'll start reading them out here in a second. But anything that you wanted to make sure you got out today that I didn't let you say?
To all of my lab
asked the wrong
colleagues
question.
out there, you wonderful, wonderful people here and beyond, you know, take care of each other, be good to one another. Let your voice be heard. Sometimes we have to go very quietly amid the noise and haste and just carry the knowledge. But I strongly advise everyone to get out there and do your thing. And I'm just feeling very humble right now and very sentimental about a career that I would have never guessed was going to happen. I knew I loved science in my undergrad. I heard about this little program called MedLab Science, and I went into it and then did my training and absolutely loved it and became an MLT. And then this other wonderful opportunity came up. Who knew?
Who knew? You
Who
could never
knew?
predict it.
It's just what a great ride it has been.
And it looks like you were joyful the whole time, because we were going through yesterday. We had a little retirement event for Chris, and there were pictures, there were photos, and everybody was reflecting on all. Of course, that as often happens in see you later soirees. But the photos were just joyful, and the people in them with you were joyful, and you all look like you're having the very best time. And I think I had a good time in my formative MLT years, but I didn't feel. But I was like, wow, God, that looks like a great time to have been alive, going and learning, and you could see it in your face that this was a discovery, a professional discovery of talents that, you know what, this is really bringing you some workplace joy, and you have been here sharing that joy for a long, long time. And it's so unique because most of us are not ever going to get that opportunity. The likelihood of anyone having a 40-year career in the same organization is pretty darn unlikely in the way things happen today, for no reason other than we don't do things that way anymore. And good for you for sticking it out. But I think you said in an interview that, you know, if you start at the top, why go anywhere else?
Well, I'm after 40 years, I'm leaving UHN, a very, very strong organization with a very strong reputation. It hasn't always been easy. We constantly push the envelope, and we're constantly changing. But that's, for me, has always been a very enriched environment. So why go? But I leave with you know, very good feelings and thoughts, and a very I'm very humbled over the career that I have been fortunate enough to have. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, pretty darn awesome. So okay, thank you. Let's check out a couple questions. We've got 3 come through, and so feel free to keep on asking. I'll start at the bottom. So any hopes for the future of point-of-care testing? I mean, we talked a little bit about, you know, perhaps doing molecular. Maybe there'll be mass spec in a box. I can't imagine. But where do you hope it goes? Bigger, contained, farther?
Yeah. Well, as we recognize that, you know, in every province, territory, land, that people should be entitled to an equal level of access to health care. And because you live in a more, let's say, a more remote region, how do we bring the appropriate testing, which can often be done through point-of-care testing, to those areas so that there is increased access to the type of testing that you should have? And I think point-of-care will continue to expand and develop over time. and IT systems are just going to make it so easy for us to do this. An example is our recently launched digital pathology program as well, where we can leverage relationships over the internet with some testing on the ground, with some of the more remote areas. I think that's where we're going to go, and it's up to our manufacturing vendor partners through R&D.
Yeah.
And through going through, licensing of their devices, et cetera, to bring those to market, so then we can figure out the utility clinically, and just stay close to our clinical partners about what makes a difference for them in their practice to treat their patients. So I think it's going to be expanding over time, most definitely.
Well, maybe you'll be doing a side hustle in point-of-care R&D, right? You can get a beach house somewhere in Malibu, just be tinkering away, sending your ideas out into the ether and see who catches them. Very cool. Okay, the next question. Did you ever have an aha moment during your career that you feel largely influenced either your trajectory in point-of-care or UHN's trajectory in point-of-care? Did it just organically build, or was like, ooh, we can do this, let's go that way?
Well, I think it was just happening naturally as UHN, the 3 acute care sites came together.
Yep.
And that was like, oh, okay, well, we can do this. This makes sense. And then in 2010, I think either that year or not long after, we brought on our Toronto rehab partners, which were complex and continuing care facilities. And so that was a bit of a, oh, okay, the UHN is going to continue to expand. It made sense for all the right reasons at that point in time. So, and then the Missioner joined us, and then recently we've added West Park to our partnership. So the kind of aha moments were, I don't think it's going to end.
Okay.
And
it was just the acquiescing that it was going to be this forever march forward, right?
It will continue to expand. I mean, not for everyone. I mean, UHN is a unique environment, no question, but it's just the expansion was just making sense.
Right.
And then of course our work in LNP with our partnerships in the north, kind of a milestone moment, figuring, oh yeah, we can do this.
Yeah.
We can do this. So,
Yeah, it is the sharing and the relationships, isn't it? It's not even about the boxes at some point. It's truly about we know stuff.
We know stuff.
Other people want to know the stuff. Let's just share the stuff, right? Let's all know the same stuff together and just be awesome as one big lab community, right?
Exactly.
We all know stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, and there's it's not so much a or it's more of a comment. So, but I'm getting close because I'm getting old. I want to say a huge thanks to Chris for her infinite dedication and your long journey at UHN. We really would like to know from you about your definition of success from your perspective, which would be a great lesson for the generation coming in now trying to build or grow their career at UHN. What is the secret Chris Curcio sauce to success?
Well, I mean, I think success can have different definitions.
Okay.
and sometimes as laboratorians, we like to have very black and white type of answers and very, restricted yes or no, right or wrong type of a scenario and situation that we work in, and it's not always possible in point of care testing. Sometimes we need to blur the lines a little bit in order to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. So we've redefined success in our program over time to, I think probably to drill it down to and boil it down to, have we done a good thing for patient care, right? So we've had to redefine a little bit and recalibrate that a little bit.
But it comes back to that same value, though, of did we do something good for patients? Did we
do something good for the patients?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. What advice would you give to lab leaders to advocate for the need for additional resources to support the growing point of care demands? I mean, there's no question. It's not cheap. Right? Point of care is human intensive because someone has to do the work.
Yes.
Usually the consumables cost more money, and you need more of the little bits and pieces to get the testing done. Right? It's not a scale operation. So how do we posture that in our extremely resource strapped environment?
Right. Again, we need to look at the bigger picture, and we need to determine which test results are actually needed for that moment in time that will impact patient care. There is a sort of a commonly held misconception around point of care testing that it's very easy to do, and we're just going to put it in just kind of for the heck of it. Yeah. And then when we actually get down to brass tacks and accreditation requirements, et cetera, it's usually a lot more than anybody ever wanted it to be or hoped it to be. But at the end of the day, the question that we're asking in when we're doing an impact analysis is, is this result needed at this moment in time to affect patient care for one way or the other, because the consumables are more expensive, and it does take quite a bit of HR, human health resource rigor to make the entire program work. But as we see, more and more healthcare institutions are, extending their branches and having to oversee clinics off-site and more hospitals. Point of care can be a solution, even though it does seem like a very expensive solution at that moment in time. But sometimes you can make it up in just the effectiveness of having a result for that moment in time, not air ambulancing out or transferring out, that sort of thing. So you need to keep your eye on the landscape, and most importantly, if at all possible, be at the table. And if work your way into being part of the table and at the discussion, because we need to say what we need to say and provide the appropriate rationale and reasoning. Then we're doing something for patient care.
And isn't that the truth, right? Just get to the table. I think that's always the best advice for anything related to lab is can we please have lab at the table? And just as you said, appreciating what's the problem you're trying to solve with point of care and what's the cost of the problem today. And hopefully the investment in point of care to solve it neutralizes the cost that you're experiencing, and patients come out the other end just that much safer, right?
Yes, and we as laboratorians, when we're there and we're at the table, we can look at things that, look at the situation, what's happening with testing from the main lab, and maybe there's something we can tweak there.
Maybe the demand goes down somewhere else because we invested here. Absolutely, but it's the getting to the table to have that conversation, so no assumptions are being made. And I think
absolutely.
You're at every table, so I never have a fear of that here because I know you're the first person people invite to the point of care party. And then it looks like we have one last question. What are your thoughts on province-wide standardization for point of care? So everyone using the same boxes, same system. Same reasons, same rationale, same indications.
I'm a firm believer in standardization because it does, because the end number for the number of operators that will be operating point of care devices can be very, very large. So standardization is just a naturally good philosophy that we should be invoking. Where we end up as a province in terms of who's overseeing who in what group of hospitals, it would be a really great thing if we could standardize. There will always be the one-offs because there's different patient populations, different areas have different needs. But I mean, we can come armed with a fleet of devices or a practice that can, that can be standardized and affect in a very efficient, cost-effective way, shall we say.
How many glucometers are in UHN right now?
We are running at about 320 glucose meters across the organization.
How many operators?
We've got over 10,000 operators, and this does not include, because we will do this, I mean, the royal we will be bringing in our partners from West Park. Which will bring in, so we'll probably end up around 360 glucose meters across the organization with probably around 12,000 operators.
Yeah, so standardization is a good thing.
It will, It
enables some predictability nevertheless. Right. Oh my goodness. Okay, parting thoughts? We're wrapping up. I want you to have a really good last word if you've got one.
Oh my gosh, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to all my lab colleagues out there at UHN and beyond. Wonderful working with you. I wish you all the very best. I will certainly be watching UHN from afar and looking at all the cool stuff that's going to happen after I ride off into the sunset on Friday.
On the UHN shuttle.
On the UHN shuttle.
Wonderful.
And, thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Folks, thank you. I mean, drop the mic. How could I get anyone else in this seat that would be as impactful as this Chris Curcio? I think we're going to have a hard time trying to find someone. But, with that said, I've not done this before, but I'd really love to know who you'd like to have sitting in the chair next to me next time. So please do drop me a line of feedback the same way you got your invitation. Shoot me a note back of who you'd like to hear from the next time we have a MedLab chat in a few months. So thankful that everybody could join us today and take their lunch hour to hang out with my cool laboratorian buddy here off to my side. Really appreciate you taking your discretionary time to meet with us. It's a gift to have time, and that you're willing to spend it with us is really important to me. Thanks so much, everybody. Have yourselves a great day, and we'll get together again next time. Bye.